some of your time, Gemma, to talk to us about your new Advent devotional, Donkey Roads and Camel Treks. So I know you wear quite a few hats, so I'd love it if you could share a little bit about what you do in the day.
Wow. So I'm a Roman Catholic sister, and I live in a community of sisters here in Cambridge, where my day job, as it were, I work as an academic theologian, and I teach theology mostly online these days. Since COVID, everything went online, and that means we have a much broader outreach. But I do miss kind of live, talking to live people. Um, and I also do a fair bit of writing and some radio broadcasting. So I was very busy when Pope Francis died and Pope Leo was elected. So I did a huge number of interviews, including one where I nearly had to do it in my pajamas and just about managed to escape from that because I thought it was a radio interview and it turned out to be a TV interview. And I was in my pajamas because it was 5:30 in the morning. So that required a very, very quick change. Um, I do a lot of traveling because I'm director of a research institute here in Cambridge, which looks into the lives of sisters and brothers who belong to religious orders in the Catholic, but also in the Anglican and Lutheran churches. And so I do quite a lot of I would call it troubleshooting for religious communities, with the emphasis on the trouble and the shooting, by and large. So I go in and see, what are their needs? What are the problems they're facing? Can I help them to find good solutions? So I'm just about to go off to Mauritius and then Australia, having been in Italy twice, three times this year. Um, France as well, but I also shoot up and down the country doing that kind of thing. And that's, you get to meet some fascinating people. Um, and I also give retreats and accompany people in their spiritual journey because I teach Christian spirituality. So all of that kind of keeps me off the streets, really. And then otherwise, I just do stuff in the house, in the community. I like cooking, so I like to be the community cook. That gives me time to think, or not to think, and just fiddle about with food, which is quite fun.
Nice. What is your signature dish?
Oh gosh, I tend to like doing savory things rather than sweet. I have very heavy hands for pastry, but I do like making tiramisu. I have to admit that I
Nice.
am good at that because that's just a question of just squelching everything together, really.
Lots of cream. It's pretty
Lots
tasty.
of cream. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. So, what I love about this book in particular is a very intriguing title. Now, you've just mentioned that you do a lot of traveling. Does this come from a particular story or
Oh,
yeah.
yes, it does. I every year I get these, I'm sure we all do, wonderful Christmas cards of a very serene looking Mary and Joseph, on a donkey. Doesn't it all look lovely? And very kind of wise and calm looking kings traveling around on their camels. But I had a sabbatical the year before COVID, so kind of 2018, 19. And I was out in Jerusalem for quite a while at the Tantur Institute. And at one point, we went out into the Sinai desert and we went to visit the monastery of St. Catherine in Mount Sinai. And they said, anybody who wants, we've got a possibility of doing a camel trek up Mount Sinai. And I thought, oh, that sounds very exciting, just like the Three Kings. Whoa. I have never been so miserably uncomfortable. I mean, honestly, those camels, they were forward and backward and after a very short while, a camel is actually a very uncomfortable thing to sit on. And I have quite a bit of padding, so I should be all right, but I could barely walk when I got down off that camel. And, they're all kind of snorting and spitting and looking kind of very crossly at you. And it is so not like the holy pictures. And when I was thinking about this book, I thought, actually, the whole journey to Bethlehem, the whole journey into faith is often a very saw an uncomfortable journey, and I thought of that wonderful poem by T.S. Eliot, The Journey of the Magi, where there's no romance in the journey at all. And yet you just keep going because you've got to keep going. And I think Christian life is a bit like that for many people. And I wanted the title of this book to reflect that a bit.
That's great. God, that must have been a really incredible experience, if uncomfortable.
Oh, it was. I mean, watching the sunrise come up over Mount Sinai. Whoa.
Yeah.
It was like being in the pages of the Old Testament. It really was. It was extraordinary.
Wow.
But let's say my nether regions paid quite a high price for for the privilege of seeing that. Mm.
Great stuff. So, what would you say was the central theme of your Advent devotional?
I think the central theme is to offer people reassurance that the journey of faith, if they are finding the journey of faith difficult or bewildering or not quite how they imagined it would be, that that's fine and it's normal and it's exactly what happened to all the characters in the Christmas story that we know so well, whether it's the shepherds or poor old Saint Joseph. I mean, goodness, what a time he had. Mary herself or the wise men. Um, any journey of faith requires struggle and takes struggle to make sense of what on earth is going on and how am I to react to this, how am I to respond to this, is this really God or is it all in my head, all those kinds of questions that I think a lot of people, including faith-filled people, have. And I wanted a book that helped people to make the spiritual journey through Advent, that didn't offer them kind of Disney World Christmas card false images, but that said, yes, it is tough. Yes, it is confusing, but why don't we go on this journey together anyway and see what happens? So it's my aim was encouragement, I suppose.
Fantastic. So, you mentioned in the first reflection how special sort of the waiting in Advent is. Have you got any good tips or practical things that you do to help sort of lean into that during what is often just a very crazy busy season for people?
Absolutely. I think, sometimes people say, don't they, that the good is the enemy of the best, that if you just settle for something that's good, you never quite make it, to do your best. But I think in prayer, it's quite the opposite, that the best is sometimes the enemy of the good, that we have these very exalted ideas that we should be able to have kind of deep and wonderful prayer for hours on end. And how realistic is that? I mean, it's not realistic in my life, and I'm a nun, let alone, the lives of working people or, people trying to bring up a family or, run a business or whatever they're trying to do or do studies. And so I think God will settle for whatever he can get out of us, and 2 or 3 minutes of just saying to ourselves, be still, breathe, wait for the Lord, wait for God, wait on God, and allow God just to say, I'm here. I'm here with you. And even if we only get that for 2 or 3 minutes, I think God is very pleased with that. And it does us the world of good. So I think the first thing about waiting is even if you can't wait for ages, even if it's just, the length it takes for the bus to arrive or the length it takes for you to drink a cup of coffee, that's good enough for God. And also, I've already seen Christmas cards and Christmas goods in the shops, and it's August. Um, we are under such relentless commercial pressure to rush into Christmas. And then, of course, the Boxing Day, they're all taking the decorations down. I mean, I have a good old rant about that in the book because I hate that. I really hate that. And I really do want us to learn to celebrate the 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah.
And so I would say, don't let yourself get rushed into Advent is all about anticipating Christmas. It's not. It's about entering into the spiritual process of waiting. The way Mary had to enter into the spiritual process of waiting 9 months for this mystery baby to arrive. And that's a gift from God, if only we can be patient enough to receive it.
So who would you say the devotional was for? And do you think can it work in a group setting?
Oh, yeah, surely. I think it's a lovely thing to do. You know, even if you're just doing it with a couple of mates online and decide, look, we'll take one evening a week or one morning or whatever, you know, to maybe give ourselves half an hour to read the text and to pray with it, and then half an hour to meet online to talk about it together. That's 1 hour out of your day. Maybe you could give that once a week for 4 weeks. It's 4 hours. It's not a huge amount of time. I mean, I would prefer it to be longer myself because I think, half an hour is not very long for a group of people to talk to each other. But, do that all with a friend, with your partner, with your kids, just to ask the kids, well, what do you make of this? Or show them some pictures or do something imaginative with them. I think I think we've slightly lost the art of Advent. We're all so desperate about, oh, must get the turkey and must make sure I've bought all the presents. And okay, those things are important. And, I cook the Christmas dinner, so I care about getting the turkey in and all those things. And I tend to make my Christmas cards and make presents, so it's a kind of busy time for me in that respect. But I think, I mean, there's the readings for Advent, the Bible readings for Advent in the liturgy are so beautiful. I never think Advent's long enough to spend time with those lovely readings from Isaiah and fabulous. And, really get down to, well, what does it mean to take on board that Jesus really is God with us? Emmanuel. What does that really mean for me, for my family, for my friends, for my workplace, for my home, for my country, for our poor world, so bewildered and so violent and so lacking in grace in many ways, and yet in small ways full of grace. Um, so yeah, I think it's important to take that time.
So what do you hope readers will take away from Donkey Roads and Camel Treks?
I hope they'll take away enough interest to kind of get stuck into the readings. And if the commentaries that I've written help with that, well, all the better. And if they don't, then please give yourself permission to ignore it and get on with the scriptures, really get into the scriptures and also to spend a little time, because the scripture readings, they're not meant to be a Bible study class, who said this and when and, what year did it happen and how does this relate to the book of Exodus or whatever? Those are good questions to ask, but I don't think they're questions to ask in this instance. It's about how do I take this on board for me, for my life of faith, for my life as a human being called by God to be the amazing self that I am? And how do I let this impact on my relationships, on my professional life, on the way I handle money, the way I treat other people, the way I speak to people, the way I spend what leisure time I have, the way I think about myself. I find as a spiritual director that, when I was a child at school, that's a long time ago, there was quite a lot of talk about the dangers of self-love, and of becoming deeply egotistical and selfish. And while I think that there are some people for whom that is a problem, and I've met enough narcissists in my time to know that, I think self-hatred is a much, much more pervasive temptation for most people, and actually, especially for women. Self-criticism, and for our young people, that their constant bombardment by social media means that they're constantly feeling that they're not good enough, they don't look good enough, they're not trendy enough, they're not cool enough. Um, and here is God coming into the mess, coming into the world and saying, this world is good enough for me, and you're worth my,
Mm.
leaving my throne in heaven and coming down to the blood and guts and awkwardness and messiness of a stable. And I think that's something that we really need to spend time on, and Advent is the time of the year to really get into that.
Mm. Brilliant. That's really good. Great.
Is that
So,
okay?
yeah. So you mentioned on day one that you're an absolute lover of Christmas. Um,
Yeah.
Slightly more light-hearted, perhaps. Can you tell us what are your favorite things about Christmas?
Oh, I don't think I could put them. I just love it from beginning to end, I'm afraid. I mean, the excitement of going up into the attic and getting the Christmas decorations out. I just go completely mad for that. And I mean everything is festooned with as many decorations. And we 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 used to have more communities than we do now. We've closed down a number of houses. And each time we closed down a house, we collected more Christmas cribs. So we've got cribs in every corner. I mean, there are more baby Jesuses in my house than I think there are, in any house in the country. And I love the music. I love the music. I remember a year or so ago catching one of my favorite carols in Sainsbury's car park, and I just switched on the radio like mega loud, and I could see there were people parked around me, or people pushing their trolleys, going past my car, looking really quite nervous. Who is this mad woman who's playing Christmas carols at pitch of lung? Um, and I like things like wondering, ooh, what would so and so like for Christmas? And I wonder if I can make that, or I wonder where I can get that from. And so, um, thinking about what the people I love would enjoy receiving as a gift. So all those things, I like that side of things. But I think the big thing for me is the scriptures, is just every single day there's a treasure to open up of God's promises to us, or God's predictions and prophecies. And, hold on, I am coming. I'm going to be with you. I am with you. Hold on tight. That's the message over and over again. And I love spending time with that. And actually, I do rather like, they have their own momentum. The days after Christmas, the days between Christmas and Epiphany. And I think sometimes we are just so busy kind of getting on with eating the pudding and all this kind of thing, that we forget to actually take time to enjoy, the fact that there are saints' days and special days and the three kings, the whole business of the journey of the Magi. That's a wonderful thing to celebrate.
So, Gemma, in one of your reflections, you ask people to think about their hopes for themselves and for others this Advent season. So, and it's something that we're also looking at the theme of hope here at Eden this Christmas. So, I'd really love to know what your hope is for this Christmas.
I think more than anything else in the world, my hope is for peace in the Holy Land, the land that, Jesus did travel on donkeys and probably on camels as well, the land that he came from, that he called home. And I have, Jewish Israeli friends, I have Palestinian Christian and Muslim friends, and I'm aware of how desperately they are all suffering at the moment and how long this has gone on for. And I pray with all my heart for a peaceful solution to what is currently going on in Israel and in Gaza. Um, and, a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. Jesus comes to us as the Prince of Peace. And I suppose I'm also aware that for some people, Advent and Christmas are not things that they look forward to. They actually dread them because there's a huge emphasis, isn't there, on, oh, Christmas is a family time and it's a time for happy families. And they may not have a happy family. They may have suffered bereavement or family breakdown or violence within the family. And so I very much pray, and I'm always conscious of praying for peace within people's homes and within people's hearts, and for people who are just plain lonely at in Advent and at Christmas, that God will in some way be able to come to them as God with us, God with me, here in my reality, whatever that may be. So that would be my hope, really.
Thanks, Gemma. That's great, great set of prayers for that, definitely. So you've written several books. So as a Christian bookseller, I'm always keen to know what is your favorite Christian book, and outside of the Bible, because I'll take that as a bit of a given, and why.
Well, I suppose my favorite book is actually not really an interesting book to read. It's called The Spiritual Exercises of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. And it's a bit like, wanting to learn how to drive and picking up the car manual. You know, you just learn where all the bits are, but that's not going to teach you how to drive. But without knowing what's in the car manual, you're not going to get very far on your journey. So the spiritual exercises are a bit like that. They're a book written to help one person to accompany another in the journey of developing a, a close personal relationship with Jesus, having encounters, real encounters with God, uh, in the person of Jesus, but through the scriptures. And I do this for a living, and I've done it for many years now, and it's just amazing. You can't know how amazing it is to sit with somebody and just say to them, you know, tell me what happened when you prayed. And people start to talk and they have the most amazing experiences. And most of the time, they don't even realize it themselves, you know. Um, there's that line it's T.S. Eliot, the poet again, who says in one of his poems, we had the experience but missed the meaning. And I think for a lot of people, that's what happens in prayer. And St. Ignatius is an extraordinarily wise guide in helping people to make the journey. And so, in that sense, it's not a fun read. It's a pretty dreary, boring read in some ways because it's quite technical. But it's a genius book that has helped so many Christians to to have a genuine encounter with God and with his son Jesus Christ through a personal reading of the scriptures. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Sounds great. I'll have to look that one up,
Yeah.
definitely. So lastly, now it's arrived, it's in my hands, it's
Oh,
in the
so
warehouse.
it's not, it's, I haven't had a copy yet, so I'm feeling very jealous of you
Oh,
there.
well, lovely
Yay!
gold spine, very nice.
Fantastic.
What's next for Gemma Simmonds?
Oh boy. Well, I'm currently writing a chapter of a book about the name Emmanuel, and that's quite Christmassy too, so that's quite exciting to be writing at this time of year. Um, and I'm also in the process of writing a kind of commentary for the Bible readings throughout the year in the Catholic lectionary, which is pretty much identical to the Anglican lectionary as it happens. So, and that's quite a challenge because, some of those readings are a bit arbitrary. You suddenly find yourself in the middle of the book of Leviticus and you think, oh Lord, what am I going to say about this? Or, somebody taking a hammer and, whacking someone else over the head with it. And you think, oh gosh, let me think of something really pious to say about that. But I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoy the challenge. So I'm looking forward to getting that finished if I possibly can.
That's great. So, Uh, we've come to the end of our lovely chat. So if you would like to find out more about Gemma and her work, where can people find out a bit more about what you do, Gemma?
Well, the Bible Reading Fellowship, which has published this book, they've got information about me on their website. You can look me up because I'm at the Margaret Beaufort Institute of Theology in Cambridge. And although that sounds like a rather kind of heavy duty title, we do lots of kind of fun and very accessible courses and things for people who are just interested in getting to know God a bit better, maybe through the scriptures, maybe through the spiritual traditions within the churches. I work within the Theological Federation, so that means we've got groups from every possible flavor of Christianity. We've got a Center for Orthodox Studies here. We have, evangelical groups. We have more kind of liberal Anglican groups and Methodists and all sorts. And we work together to help people to really embrace the richness of their traditions and of other traditions within Christianity, to get to know Christ better and to be better ambassadors for Christ. And that's our purpose. So if you want to know anything about that, just look me up, and you will probably find something that suits you.
That sounds like a fantastic purpose. Thank you so much for your time, Gemma. So
It's my
yeah,
pleasure, Anna.
available at Eden. Grab a copy, grab several copies, do it with friends, do it with a church group, a small group. Thank you so much, Gemma. Take care. Nice to speak to you.